Imagine, a podcast series by Imagine Theatre.
Yes, hello again and welcome to episode 133 of this podcast series from Imagine Theatre. And this is the second part of our quarterly series looking at a year and the life of a producer.
For more information, go to their website at www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.
In the last episode, I was joined by Imagine's joint CEO, Business and Marketing Director Sarah Boden, and Jasmine Evans, the Operations and Productions Administrator, to discuss the company's sustainability strategy. This is just one area of discussion on the podcast series. So far, we've met all sorts of fascinating guests, from creatives and backstage team members to panto practitioners and academics. We've discussed lots of different aspects of the genre, from specific panto characters and titles to how pantomime is produced, its history and its future. Now, there's an index to all of the episodes so far on the Imagine Theatre website, and you can catch up with any episodes you've missed so far where you normally get your podcasts from. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe to the series so that you don't miss any future episodes. So this time, I'm here at Trafalgar House once again with Sarah Boden for the second in our four-part series concentrating on a year in the life of a panto producer. I have to say, Sarah, it's another busy period though, isn't it? So how are you?
Good, Martin. How are you?
You've had a break though, at least since the last time we spoke, but this is the summer now and everybody's thinking you're probably going away for a month, but actually it's really hard again at the moment, isn't it? It's picking up pace.
It is, and we talked about it in the last episode, Martin. The January, February crazy period that everybody doesn't quite realise is over. The March lull a little bit is kind of done. And as we move into April, May and June, the train, as we describe it, the pantos train, starts to leave the station and starts to speed up. And whilst it may feel like they're quite a long way away from everything, there's a hub of industry going on in the main unit, getting everything ready. Huge amounts of the first production meetings, regular weekly meetings going through where we are, marketing reviews. There is so much happening at the moment that people wouldn't necessarily realise, because we do get that what do you do the rest of the year kind of question at this point in the year.
So in the first episode we talked about casting announcements have been made, because obviously there'll be some returners and some people who sign contracts early, but that's something that continues all the way through the year. But in this sort of period, it's a busy time because there are more and more castings announced, aren't there?
Well, there's more and more castings announced, and obviously there's some that are announced and some that aren't, and people say to us, well, are you going to announce this person or that person? And we say, I can't tell you what's going on. They're probably contracted on our side, but for various reasons, the theatre might have wanted to delay the announcement because they have something else they want to announce instead, or we're still waiting to complete a photo shoot, or we've just done a photo shoot and the artwork's being worked on. And as you start to go into the summer holiday period, if you don't announce somebody before the school holiday period, there's no point in announcing during the summer, because you lose everybody for a while, because hopefully the weather will be glorious like last year. And so it's all about timings, and sometimes there's always a reason why we do what we do when we do, and it doesn't always seem obvious on the outside from the very start.
Either way, you'll be wanting to sort of lock in the casting. Even if you can't announce them, you'll want to lock them in, and that means now an audition period as well.
Oh yeah, auditions abound at the moment. The casting team are all over the country doing various things, and obviously we can't say much about it, lots of top secret stuff. But yeah, loads of things happening in the casting world, not just in the adults world either, but I'm sure we'll talk about it, but in the children too. All but 2 of our pantos will feature children this year, and the pantos that don't feature children this year are hopefully going to have children next year. And there's an awful lot of recruitment going on and an awful lot of auditions and contracting right now.
So in terms of the casting and the audition process, you've got the venues. We talked about this last time. The venues to actually do the auditions, they have to be booked pretty early on, and the dates are set in stone and so on. Who's involved in that process? Who will be there at the auditions?
Well, we have obviously Louise, who heads up our casting, and she's absolutely fantastic, an encyclopedic knowledge of casting and people that we've worked with, and we love Lou for that. On top of that, Steve will be often involved. Our creative teams might be involved, and our associate producers from particular productions. So each of our shows has an associate producer, and that person heads up that particular show. And sometimes they're there depending upon whether we're looking for something specific or not. So, and then obviously there'll be a choreographer in the room as well, and there'll be a musical director in the room as well from various stages. So there's an army of people that it takes. And then back in head office, there's an army of people then waiting to create the contracts that sit behind the back of that and make the offers. And Lou obviously heads up a lot of the offers that we do, but she has a team of administrators sitting behind her who just do all that back office support.
Yeah, and this is different every year because you'll have a different number of returnees, you'll have a different number of celebrity castings and so on. So you'll be auditioning totally different roles in different numbers each year.
That's right. And sometimes your returners might be a dame in comic. Sometimes it might be a principal female or male role. Sometimes there will be a kind of a rep company. So that's, we might have 7 or 8 different cast members that typically work on that show, of which we might bring back 5 and rest a couple. And so that cycle will depend upon who's available and who's interested and who wants to do it as to what parts are available. And again, we get lots of questions about why don't you put your casting out earlier in the year? And we say, because when you're doing 21 shows like we are, it's a massive jigsaw of waiting for certain key elements to fall in place, whether that is your principal lineup casting, so your non-names or your profiles or your returners or somebody that you want to move from somewhere to somewhere else.
Yeah.
All of that has to fall in place first before we're able to open the casting up. And then you have to think about your understudy maps and who's going to understudy who and how you're going to manage the show if somebody goes down and who's going in there. And so it is literally an enormous jigsaw puzzle. And the bigger we get, the harder that jigsaw puzzle becomes to solve.
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about that. There may be people who return but not to the same venue. For whatever reason, they might want to change. It could be that there isn't a role suitable for them in the same venue. And then there's a whole minefield of understudies because since COVID particularly, everybody has taken that so much more seriously now, haven't they? And every role is covered. Oh
gosh, Martin, do you remember way back 25 years ago when we very first met each other and we did that production of Aladdin in Loughborough Town Hall, and we didn't have any understudy provision, and my goodness me, we were flying by the seat of our pants on occasion. But now there's a really robust understudy map put into every single production, who's covering who, not just on stage but off stage too. So who would cover the company manager if they went down, who would cover the show calling if the show caller went down, who would cover the musical director. All of these elements have to be considered and factored in. And and who are the ensemble members, and what extra parts can they take on if they need to, or how do we swap people around? And sometimes you might find that somebody who's playing Jack in Jack and the Beanstalk, for example, is the understudy to the dame, and then there's an understudy within there. So it's not just one step, sometimes it's 2 steps that you have to undertake to do the successful understudy. Yeah, it's a huge challenge, and it's really important that we give everybody the space to learn what they need to learn, and also give the show the ability to keep running. Because as we know, pantom is a short, sharp shock. It is only a very short space of time and an awful lot of demand in a very short space. And illness happens, it does. And how do we support people through that when they aren't well enough to perform?
Okay, so you've got at least some of your casts for all of the shows. You may not be able to do complete photo shoots yet, but you'll be doing some, and then even if you aren't doing them for some venues, you'll be planning them already, because there's a pressure to get artwork done, isn't there, as well?
Oh, absolutely. And Martin, it's photo shoots abound at the minute. I mean, there's photo shoots happening all over the place. There's an army of marketeers, some internal, some external, freelancers supporting us, videographers, photographers, artwork designers. This is that point in the year when artwork is going at a pace. We're planning the artwork, we're planning the videography for the rest of the year, capturing everything we can. It's really hard sometimes to predict what the video trends are going to be, but when you're doing a photo shoot this early in the year, you've got to try and capture what you think is needed, and then try and get a content creator maybe to a press launch day or something else to help us capture the remainder of it. So it's hard to know what we need, but also we have to capture it.
And we've talked about this before, but times have really changed now in terms of the way you promote a show. Less radio maybe, less newspaper, more social media than ever before. Video reels and memes and all that sort of stuff is really taking over.
It is, Martin. The future is AI, I'm afraid, and that's where we're going at the moment.
No future for us then.
But it is, at the end of the day, it's a little bit like when the cloud came in, isn't it? You embrace it or you get left behind.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of AI embracing going on here at the moment, both in terms of our processes internally to help AI drive the producing process for us, but also AI driving the marketing process as well, and how we work strategically with AI tools, not to throw out what came. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because you can't beat the grassroots marketing of a billboard on the wall or some post coming through your front door that tells you that a show is on. But the AI bots are now looking for something different online. They're looking for AI-enabled posts, AI-enabled information, so that they can find that data and spread it out. And we touched upon before the fact that pricing isn't necessarily on flyers anymore. It isn't on websites as much anymore. So you've got to educate the AI bots on what they need to know to be able to tell people what they want to hear. So the world of marketing is changing apace at the moment.
Yeah, and people may not understand, in terms of, you've talked about in previous episodes, financial margins being tight and so on. The difference between a major billboard or even 1,000 flyers and what you can do on social media is massive financially, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's huge. And I remember one day having a conversation with somebody who said to me, I don't understand why that billboard is not up for the entire run. And me saying, and this was a while ago, so the prices I'm quoting are a while ago, and they've tripled since then. And me saying, well, how much do you think it costs me to put a billboard up for a fortnight? And this person just looking at me going, about 50 quid. And I said, well, it's probably more like £500 for a fortnight to put a billboard up. And that's a 48 sheet. You take that to a 96 sheet and you're looking at more. And now they're digital. And the irony is that digital gets you less visibility but costs you 3 times as much. Yeah. And all of these elements versus thinking about what AI can do to drive it for you. And actually, there is relatively little cost to making sure you're AI enabled. And so it's going back to the drawing board and looking at what elements of the marketing plan have to be paid for, what elements of it we want to digitize, and all of that. And that every year that's changing, and we can't just sit back and go, oh, we've always done that, so that's how we're going to do it. Hence the fact in the previous episode we were talking about the debriefs. Just because we've done it in the past doesn't mean it's right anymore. And the world of Panto has always thrived on the fact that it's looking forwards rather than looking backwards. And it's about how we continue to look forwards. And we've always said, haven't we, we're purely the custodians of this art form. We're not here to say we own it. We don't. We need to make sure that we follow what's going on in the world, so that when we hand it over to the next generation, we are already doing all of the things that they need it to do, even if we are slightly older now, and we are, and it's not the stuff that we would have done when we were younger. We have to embrace it and we have to move with it.
Yeah, and the only way to improve is to have quantifiable results as well. And it's difficult to quantify how many people have seen a flyer or a billboard, for instance, isn't it? But you can actually quantify views and likes and all that sort of stuff on social media, and that's how AI can benefit. You mentioned juvenile chorus auditions. They're around at the moment at various venues. And that kicks off a whole new process, doesn't it, in terms of licensing, contracts, and so on?
Yeah, so we're looking at the year in the life of a producer, and sort of January to March is spent very much wrapping up the previous year's children's ensemble information, making sure that we've filed it all correctly, because it all has to be GDPR compliant. We have to hold the data until the final child turns 21, and then we can destroy the data. So, some of these productions that we're doing now, we may have to hold data for 12 years on, because if a child is 9 years of age, or we may only hold them for 5 if all the children were 16, for example. So we have to look at all that, and a lot of that takes that kind of January to March period. We kind of start to move into the prep period in March. But as you say, we are now in the stage where we're just about to go out with all the children's auditions. We have about a third of them before the summer holidays, so they happen in June and July, and the rest of them all happen in August and September, with the Scottish schools going back in August. They go in August, and then we do that. It's a huge amount of work for Neve, who's our children's administrator. She has a lot of logistics to plan, There's 2 venues, that's Bromley and Cardiff, that aren't having children this year, purely because it's our first year producing. We felt we wanted to get the show right first. There are conversations about children joining those productions moving forwards, which we would love, because we're a big believer in giving any child an opportunity to be part of it. But it does create an awful lot of work. Each child has to be licensed. We also license the reserve teams. Children come from different licensing authorities, and I think last year we were working with something like 57 different licensing authorities, and that's a lot of logistics and a lot of planning and a lot of licenses, and in an ideal world all of them would use the same process to get their license, but they don't.
No. Well, we talked about this before, didn't we? And it makes things so much easier if it was centralised in some way or done in a different way. But I think a lot of people would understand that a child needs a licence to perform, but they would assume that the licences were all arranged by the area in which the show is being staged. So in Reading, for instance, the council there, but of course it's not. It's done by where the children live. And even in a city like Leicester, which is one I know, for instance, you may have kids who audition from the county, which is a different authority, or even from outside Leicestershire completely, which is a different authority. So it becomes really complicated.
Yeah, it does. And when you think about all the different areas, so if you take Leamington Spa, which I'm probably one of the pantos, or Coventry I'm most familiar with, we're dealing with Leicestershire, Coventry, Warwickshire, Solihull, Northamptonshire. That's just off the top of my head. Though that panto alone could have 5 different authorities. Times that by 20 pantos, and before you know it, yes, there's crossovers, of course, whereas Kent tends to cover Bromley and Dartford and a few others. So we do see crossovers of counties and things, but you're dealing with an awful lot of different people, and it's really important that we give every child an opportunity. What I don't want to do is say you can only come if you are from Warwickshire, if you're in Leamington, or you can only come if you're Leicester City, if you're in Leicester. Absolutely, we would never entertain that, because it's really important that every child is given an opportunity. So we just have to deal with an awful lot of licensing authorities.
Absolutely. As you said as well, the process isn't standardised either. So you're dealing with all these different authorities, but they all do it in a different way. So maybe that needs to change. And of course, we're in a process now where, local government looks like it's going to be reorganised. So authorities will change in the future, which adds yet another complication. So poor old Neve's going to be stuck in a darkened room for years.
I know, bless her. Yeah, but we are one of the only producers left that still has children in our shows. There are a couple of the bigger producers that have taken them out, and that's their decision, and we totally respect that. But from our perspective, we feel that there needs to be a training ground within panto. As we've talked about before, there are very few university drama degrees that actually touch upon panto at all. So this massive industry, which is enormous, and it's the biggest employer of actors and performers and stage management, doesn't have a training ground. So where are we going to find those people unless we train them ourselves? And children is a prime example of where we feel particularly passionate that we need to give back.
Okay, with regards the adult cast, you may have cast them. If you have, then they may have done a photo shoot. That will involve costumes. If they worked for you before, you know their sizings and so on. But generally, every actor is sent a piece of paper or details to fill in on their measurements. But even now, the costume fittings are starting, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. So the dames are coming in all the time. Martin, you'll remember this from your time with us. You had boots that were yours that used to come back to you every year. There used to be a box that sat there that said Martin Ballard on them, and then we would pull that box down and give it you back each year. In fact, I thought that
was because I had a verruca.
In fact, I think we've still got some of your boots, Martin, in the stores. One day, mate, one day. And and it's really important that particularly dames come in and they're fitted properly, because each one has their own nuances. So you take dames, for example, some of them will like to wear a pair of Doc Martens like you used to. Some of them will prefer to wear heels. Some will prefer a long dress that covers their legs. Some will prefer short. Some like short sleeves. Some like long sleeved. Some like skirts with crins underneath. Some like more structured pieces. And so it's really important that we make that fitting work for the individual that's coming into us. But also the photo shoots are a great time for the wardrobe department to see that set of measurements on a page, but actually physically meet the body that is that measurements, and what kind of cut might suit them. We might assume that a certain cut of costume suits somebody, meet them and then go, well, that isn't going to work. we need something completely different to make them feel more comfortable. Older ladies, for example, prefer maybe their arms being covered. Everybody has a personal preference of where they feel comfortable, and we're putting people in front on stage. Sometimes, take Glasgow Pavilion, 82,000 people will see that panto. Everybody's got to feel comfortable in their costume when they go on that stage to give the best performance that they can. So yeah, the wardrobe department are flat out with wigs, with shoes, with costumes, with cleaning. The cleaning of costumes takes ages, and we've said this before. We can't put most of the costumes in a washing machine, so they are literally washed by hand, and then we have washing lines outside the building that we put on sunny days. We have what's called hot boxes, which are tumble dryers which don't tumble. All sorts of different ways of drying things, but there's a team of people scrubbing those costumes clean, ready for the following year, and that's happening as well at the moment.
And also with the team that you have and the knowledge that they have, for instance, in a venue you may have a show that comes round again that's been done there 5 years ago with a couple of the people who were in it last time, for instance. So somebody will be going, yeah, but we can't use that, and we don't want to use that because they were in the show last time, even though they fit the actors perfectly. You've got to have that knowledge as well, so you're not repeating things.
Absolutely, and that's, there's meticulous lists kept. Again, Martin, going back to your example, I remember you saying to me, I think I've done 12 years for Imagine and I've never worn the same costume twice. Absolutely, that's exactly the point. There are a couple of occasions when we've had to do that. I think about James McInerney up in Kilmarnock, who wore the same Demon King costume twice, but he looked so fantastic in it. Yeah. And also the particular production we don't do very often, so we don't have a lot of costumes, but that's really a rarity. I would say I can probably count on one hand in 275 performances in productions we've staged how many times we've had to do that, but there's always been a reason why. But no, that's why we hold 30,000 costumes here, because we can keep cycling. You won't see the same costumes on the stage, you won't see the same ensemble. I think maybe once we've had to put the same set back into a venue because it was such a good fit to the venue. Yeah. But again, it's a no-no to put sets back into venues, to put all sorts of things back in. So you'll see those are the things that we have to keep meticulous lists on. That's the kind of stuff that's being sanity checked right now. Is we think we're going to put this set and this costumes, let's just go back and sanity check that that's the right thing to be done.
And even if you do use a set or a costume again, it very often won't look the same. It might be dressed in a slightly different way and so on. The audiences wouldn't even notice. But, it's an interesting thing to consider that many people who go and see a show wouldn't even think about. In terms of the shows themselves now, where are we at? Is the summer, approaching the summer holidays, where are we at with both the creative meetings and the scripts and the song choices?
Yep, so production, we do first wave of production meetings. They've already taken place, so all that planning is in place. We know all of the elements that are happening in the shows, ground plans are drawn up, and all of those kind of things. So we're confident that we're doing all the repairs, all the maintenance to all the sets at the moment. In terms of scripts, we're pretty much locking those in now. They've been around the first couple of cycles. The earlier you can lock in your scripts, the more chance you have of getting the right props in the right places, getting the right routines in the right places, locking in your music. You think that actually if you're doing that once in a cycle and we have to repeat that 21 times, that's 21 lots of music that have got to be planned, 21 lots of props, 21 lots of comedy routines. So if we don't lock them in very soon, we've got a job on our hands in the autumn. So this is the time that we're locking now. Yeah. A little bit earlier than we've done it in the past, but there's a change of the way that we're working here with a change of staffing. But that's the plan. Everything locked in pretty imminently.
And of course you've got lots of different script writers, so you'll be having meetings with them as well. And even though it's a first draft of the script now, it will still continue to evolve.
Oh gosh, yeah, it does evolve. And obviously it has to react to the, Panto is a commentary of what's happening. And so we can lock a script in all we like, but if an absolute gem of a situation arises, or a musical choice that we've made needs changing because there is a massive hit, then obviously those are the kind of things that happen in the autumn. What we try not to change is the structure of the show. If you look at last year, and last year was a gift of a musical year, there were some brilliant songs that came through, Abracadabra, Golden, Pink Pony Club, all of these things, but they came through quite late in the year. Yeah. A lot of the stuff was locked at that point, and then we unlocked it and we made musical changes or we made musical choices. I take the example, one of my favourite versions of Golden that I heard all year last year was by the fabulous Jen Neal in Glasgow. Oh my goodness. Everywhere else had played Golden as a pop song, but Jen didn't feel quite comfortable with her soliloquy song that we'd given her at the top of the beanstalk while she was waiting to see if she was going to be saved. And she said, I think I can turn Golden into a really, really beautiful ballad. Will you let me have a go? Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness me, Martin. She nailed it. It was stunning. That decision was made last minute in the rehearsal room. So all the locking we want to do right now, just sometimes a gift of a situation arises and that change is made.
Well, you're already looking ahead to the 27-28 season as well at the moment, which is yet another challenge. But I've got to ask you about F1. F1, because there's no Lewis Hamilton involved in this, but what's F1 all about?
Oh, F1's my joy. So the way that Trafalgar works its budgeting year is it has 4 periods. So your budgeting period locks in January, February, and that's the point at which you decide upon your budget for the year. But obviously we're not in a position to decide upon exactly what's going to go into all the shows in January because we're only just closing the previous season. We haven't debriefed, we haven't fully planned. So we put together a target budget, really, that we say we think we're going in this direction with each of the productions. And that gives us an amount of money that we can spend. And then we spend April, May and June going, is that accurate? Do we need to rob Peter to pay Paul in certain circumstances? Have we put the right amount of money in here? Have we cast a different size of star? F1 happens in June and is our first forecast. So this is where we never used to work like this. This is where the joys of having a parent company like Trafalgar come in. And F1 is the point at which in June we say, right, now we know for definite what the shows are going to look like because we've spent February, March, April, May locking that in. In fact, we probably knew in April what our F1 numbers were going to be. It's just that Trafalgar in particular requires us to lock them at that point. And that's the point at which we know exactly where we're going. We know exactly what our cast sizes are. We've cast our profile names. We know all of the elements of the shows because we've already done the first production meetings. There's all this planning that's sitting behind the scenes. There's still further forecasts to come, which I'm sure we'll talk about in future episodes. But this is the point at which we're locking now. And we're pretty confident that we know where the flying rigs are going, where the specific hires are going, where we need to do certain elements, where we're investing in things, where we're building new elements. That's what we're locking in.
And just very briefly, I mentioned the 27-28 season. In terms of the planning for that now, do you already know the titles and the venues?
I mean, we've started to get an idea of where we're going with things. We're starting to think about what sets are going where, what costumes are going where, what the cycle of those venues is. It's not locked yet. We have an idea, but that won't lock probably for another 3 months yet. We're having ongoing conversations with venues, but as you can appreciate, if suddenly everybody went, well, we want Cinderella this year, we can't service that. So it's kind of, again, another one of those big jigsaws of everybody has to be happy with the title they have, and only at the point at which everyone says yes can you lock that in, because otherwise you're jiggling around a little bit and moving sets around between places. But yeah, getting there at early stages.
Fascinating insight again. We'll be back with part 3 in September as things really start to ramp up towards the next season. Sarah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Martin.
And that's it for now. Don't forget to subscribe through your favourite podcast app, and make sure you join me, Martin Ballard, next time for episode 134, when I'll be talking to the illusionist, puppeteer, actor and writer, best known as Sooty's right-hand man, Richard Cadell.
Thank you for listening to the latest edition of Just Imagine, the podcast series from Imagine Theatre. And you can find out more by going to www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.